Hello, this is Daniel Kiran from Vancouver, British Columbia, and I'd like to speak to you briefly today about how to conduct a counseling session leading from the beginning, opening the counseling session, deepening the counseling session, and then bringing closure to the session. When a client comes in for a session and sits down, you can sometimes you can simply smile and they'll begin to talk, or you can be more focused in your opening statement by saying, what would you like to talk about today? And when the client responds to that, they may begin with something superficial, or they may begin with something that is a problem that they're facing. If they begin with a current difficulty or issue, so for example, a person says that they had a fight with their spouse today or yesterday, you can ask them to say a little bit more about that. So you could say more about that. It's an invitation to talk. And then as the person is speaking, you can ask them to talk about their feelings. This helps them to become more aware of their emotions. So you can give them a feeling list, especially early on in the counseling relationship. It's important to educate the client sometimes about the variety and range of emotions that they may experience, because many times people are not able to put words to their feelings. And so you can say, so what are you feeling right now as you're talking? Are you feeling maybe a little sad or angry or scared or some other emotion? So prompt the client then to put a word to the feeling that they're experiencing in the moment as they are speaking. And you may want to reach for a validation of that by saying, is it okay to feel that? Or you may want to actually validate it as well by saying, that sounds like a normal feeling to have with what you're describing, with what you've experienced. So you validate the feeling, then you can invite them to say more. For example, if a client is describing a conflict or a fight that they had with their spouse, you can explore a little bit about what that fight was about, what the issues were, and you can ask the client, you can explore whether or not the client was okay with the way they handled the conflict, whether they spoke up and asserted their issues, their feelings, their emotions, or whether they kept them inside and avoided addressing their issues. And so if a person says, I didn't really say anything, I didn't really express my feelings, I guess I kept my feelings inside and I kept it all to myself. And then you can say to the client, so I wonder if that's kind of a pattern for you, that when there is a problem or a conflict, that you keep your feelings inside, you keep them to yourself, and you don't speak up, or you avoid speaking up. So when the person acknowledges that, you can say, so who was the first important person in your life that you had a conflict with, or that you had an issue with, and you didn't speak up in that situation? So they may go back to childhood, for example, and that's part of the deepening process of the counseling session is to take the client from the present issue or problem that they're describing to an earlier time, and eventually to the earliest time that they experienced that situation, that kind of issue. And so you say then, talk a little bit more about that. That's an invitation to talk. This gives the client the opportunity to begin to explore and to vent perhaps unresolved feelings about an unresolved conflict from a much earlier period in his or her life. And when a person talks about that and says that they kept their issue to themselves or they didn't dare speak up, then it's important to validate that as well by saying it makes sense you would keep that inside because you were a child and perhaps it was a way of protecting yourself. What were you afraid might have happened if you had spoken up to your parent, to your father, to your mother, for example? Then they might describe their fear of being punished. Maybe they might report an experience of abuse or an experience of withdrawal or abandonment. So there's always a story or an explanation about why the client developed a passive, withdrawn personality style, especially in relation to issues and conflicts. So you're going to validate that by saying it makes sense you would have kept that inside then because you were afraid that if you'd spoken up you might have been hurt in some way. And it worked well for you then and helped you to survive as a child. Does it work well for you now in your life? And they'll probably say, no, it doesn't work now. And you can say, what are the disadvantages to you when you don't speak up in situations or when you have issues and problems in your relationship now with your husband? And she may then go on to describe feeling resentful, feeling depressed, feeling stress, anxiety. Because what happens to the client when they don't air their feelings and speak up about their issues is that they have to carry that around, and it contributes to their stress in their life. And it may come out in the form of depression or in the form of even physical complaints and things of that nature. So your goal then is to help the client change their unhealthy way of relating to a healthy way. And one of the ways we can begin to help a client do that is by learning to be assertive through the use of role-playing. And role-playing, for example, the relationship with their parent, in which they actually do then speak up to the parent. Now this can be anxiety-producing and frightening for a client to do that, because when you role-play that, the client will go back into their childhood state of being, which they've actually in fact brought forward into their adult relationships. But what you're wanting to help the client to do is to grow up in their relationships, including the parental relationship as well as their current adult relationships. So instead of repeating the pattern that they began in childhood, we're wanting to help them grow up and mature in their ways of relating. So this is where I'll close for now, and perhaps at another time I'll speak about how to use role-playing, how to use psychodrama, how to use enactment exercises and empty chair techniques to help a client grow. Thank you.